Okay, so the final part of our presentation is, of course, our finance and the way we manage our finances and, in fact, our governance. I think, actually, if ever there was a moonwalking bear, it's finance and governance. It is absolutely the stuff that goes on underneath the surface, that goes on within the four walls that no one really sees. But you can't, and certainly we can't, as an organisation that asks people for fundraising, that it gets donations, we can't have a good organisation if we haven't got good finance management and we haven't got good governance. The first thing to talk about with our finance and governance is really our organisational chart. And while the parts of the organisational chart of the staff are up there for you to see, I really want to focus on the top part, and that of course is that we have a board, and that board is a skills-based board. It's the people are chosen on the basis of a skills matrix, and where we believe there to be gaps in that skills matrix. As part of the board, there are three subcommittees. They, of course, are the nominations committee, and that committee is made up of board members and 2 independent members. Those 2 independent members are as 1 life member and 1 just independent member, full stop. That nominations committee, we believe it important to have those independent members of the nominations committee, because the nominations committee's role is to appoint board members. And if we didn't have that level of independence, then we would tend to have board members appointing board members, and we felt that wasn't the right way to go. We have an audit and risk committee, and that audit and risk committee has 2 functions. Obviously, within audit, there's 2 functions. There's an external audit to liaise with our external auditors, being Davidson's, and also to conduct an internal audit. We're not a big enough organisation to be able to pay for a full-blown internal audit of our processes. But we do have a partner in Patrick Rowan Associates on that audit and risk committee, Daleen Kroger. And each and every year she comes and conducts an internal audit of our processes, of our financial management, the way we handle debtors, creditors, cash, etc. She comes in quite independently, quite separately, sits down for half a day and asks for a range of information from myself and from our accountant, who then has to provide those information, and she provides an independent report back to the board. Of course, they also have a role in risk, and I'm going to talk a little bit about our risk management shortly. And then finally, we have a finance and investment committee, and that finance and investment committee looks at our management reports. Our management reports or finance reports are completed monthly, and they're delivered to the board monthly. They are delivered also to all of the key staff, and then every 2 years we have board meetings. Every 2 months we have board meetings, and the finance committee goes through those finance papers in much greater detail. They also have a role in our investments. We have about $3.5 million in investments that give us some financial sustainability. And what's really clear to the finance committee is that their role isn't to suggest which investments we should buy or sell, but it is to manage that finance policy. That investment policy, and that investment policy dictates what asset classes we should invest in and what percentages of asset classes we should invest in. And so the finance committee has a role in making sure that that is conducted by our expert investment advisors. Within governance, we have a framework within our governance policy, and that framework is really quite clear. It clearly delineates the role between board and between management. You can see that within our board's role, they have a compliance role and a performance role. They have an external role and internal role, as well as looking at the past and present, but also a policy making. But most importantly, there in the middle, you can see that they work through the CEO. And it's really important that the board works through the CEO, and that the board members aren't going to individual staff members, because that creates confusion and difficulty for other staff members. And the board have been very clear about what that delineation is. The board sets its own KPIs, and those KPIs are different from the organisation KPIs. While we might have KPIs around income, or we might have KPIs around outcomes and measurement of those outcomes or our impact, the board sets its own KPIs of its performance, things such as attendance at board meetings, attendance at other functions, and then measures those against those KPIs once a year, and then does a internal survey of what they believe is missing in the board performance and what they can improve on. They have clearly three roles, the board, and the board are very clear on what those roles are. Strategy, and that is development of the strategy and then oversight of its implementation. Risk, and that is the development of a framework and identification of risk, but absolutely not to manage the risk, because that's management's role. And then oversight of the operation. That's not to actually have their fingers in the operation, but they definitely have their nose in it. So they definitely make sure that they know what's going on, and they are clear about what is going on, what management is doing to ensure that the organisation operates at a high level. That we have a board development policy to ensure that the board is getting its own personal development and keeping up to date with things like the AICD, and there are a suite of very clear policies. On the table in front of you, you will have a board induction kit, and you could pass that around and you can see every board member before they start receives that induction kit. It has due diligence that the board member needs to conduct before becoming a board member, and then all of the information that's required by a board member. It has our constitution, our strategic plan, our theory of change, all of the policies, all the terms of reference for the committees, and financial reports as well. From a compliance point of view, we have developed over actually 5 or 6 years now a really thorough compliance checklist, and it has a range of things. Everything that we need to comply with from a rules and regulation, a legal perspective, is on this checklist. Things like BAS and superannuation, of course, are on that checklist, but even things like our IP. So I can remember when I first started, we put this on the checklist, the fact that our intellectual property, our logos and our trademarks were going to expire in 10 years' time. And we put that's going to expire in 2021. At the time, 2021 sounded like a long time ago. It doesn't sound like that long ago now, but it's on that compliance checklist. And you can see that we use a traffic light system whereby green is up to date, orange is coming up to something that we have to do. So within 3 months we will need to do something, and red is if we've missed something. That compliance checklist goes to both the Audit and Risk Committee and the Finance Committee each and every meeting, and then to the board for noting each and every meeting. From a finance management point of view, we, I think, are very thorough in our finance management. We have monthly management reports produced by our accountant independently, and they go to the leadership team at Give Where You Live Foundation, and of course to me as the CEO. They also go to the board for noting, and then, as I said, every second month they go to the Finance Committee and then the board for further discussion. What I think is important about those management reports are that our leadership team has full ownership of their cost centres or profit centres within them. They set the budgets, they then manage those budgets, and then they get the reports back telling them how they're going against those budgets. It's a really important flow through from our budgets and our strategic plan through to our work plans. Each and every member of staff has a work plan, a 12-month work plan, and they're asked to complete that work plan based on 2 key organisation documents. Those 2 documents are the strategic plan and the budget. So each and every staff member needs to think about what role do they play in the budget, what things do they need to achieve from our budget, and also what things do they need to achieve as part of our strategic plan, our 3-year strategic plan. We have balance sheet management. We don't have a great deal of debtors and creditors, so our management of that is fairly simple. But one of the things we do have are outstanding grants from time to time, particularly in a 3-year grant period, as I mentioned earlier in my presentation. So we might have a $175,000 grant where only $50,000 goes out in the first year. However, we account for the full $175,000 within that financial year. So that ensures that we end up with a liability on our balance sheet to that grantee so that we can manage our balance sheet and manage our cash over the ensuing 2 years. We have clear sets of KPIs all the way through, and then we also have a dashboard that goes to the board every board meeting, just to give them a snapshot of the financial results. So things like total income, workplace giving income, where our expenses are sitting. From a risk perspective, as I said earlier, we have a Audit and Risk Committee, and we've developed a really extensive risk appetite framework. And you can see on the screen that risk appetite framework really covers all of the areas across the organisation. It measures what the likelihood is and the possible outcomes of any risks occurring. This framework gives us a really clear indication of how we should categorise different risks within our risk register. And then our risk register is a very comprehensive document that shows all of the risks. There are about 27 in total. It's constantly added to and adjusted and changed by the Audit and Risk Committee. Some risks are taken off when we feel that they're no longer a risk. Some are, of course, added when we believe a new risk has come. But you can see that as you change different columns, you change the likelihood or the consequence of certain risks, then it will change what our residual and our inherent risks are. We put in our mitigation measures, and that gives us a really clear idea of how well we're going in terms of mitigating that risk. And then ultimately it gives us what our residual risk is, and we need to think about further treatment plans on how we go about mitigating that risk. This is a really live document and one that we use at board level very, very regularly. So you've seen our moonwalking bears. I think whether it be the business achievements, the insight, the imagination, the innovation that we've shown behind the scenes to achieve some, I think, pretty reasonable results over the last 4 or 5 years, whether it be the marketing that we produce and the collateral that we produce that enables us to connect to so many different organisations and different people across the region, whether it be the customer service that we show to our donors and making them feel part of the Give Where You Live family, or whether it be the absolutely specific and clear decisions we've made about our culture, about making sure that we shape our culture into the way that we want it to be an open place, to be able to have the hard conversation when you need to have, but a gentle conversation as well, or whether it be about a learning organisation culture and making sure that mistakes will happen, but we learn from those mistakes and we know that we're going to do better next time. Or simply whether it's about the boring stuff, the finance management or the governance. They're our moonwalking bears. They're the things that we think go on behind the scenes. They're the things that we think have really helped us become an organisation that has produced some really good results, that hopefully continues to produce some really good results. So the final thing for me to say is just to thank all of you. I have no doubt, having just recently read 85 applications for grants to us and the time and effort that takes, I have absolutely no doubt that this is a huge effort from all of you. Going and visiting businesses, I think you no doubt get a great insight into the region and the local economy and into some of the fantastic things that businesses are doing, and I'm sure you get something out of it, but I know you're putting a lot into it. So we were delighted to get to this part of the awards process. We were really excited about it. Win, lose or draw, we know because of our culture, we know that we're going to learn something out of it, and we're really excited about being able to learn something out of it. But we would like to thank you for all of your input and all of the work that you've had to complete. So there are our moonwalking bears, and we hope to hear from you soon. Thanks very much.